Hi, how is everybody today? Good. Has anybody bought insurance before? No one? Okay, good. Um, so I'm here to talk to you today about insurance for a startup or a small business, what you need and when you need it. Because it's a big problem that we go through a lot with our clients. So a little bit about me. I was in marketing for a large bank for a number of years and then left that business to start my own business, Miss Laurie's Gourmet Kitchen, where I taught cooking classes, and I took a family recipe for peanut brittle and turned it into a very busy business. And when I started that, everybody thought it would be a cute little hobby business that I was doing from home. And I, of course, got incorporated. I called the health department and had them come and inspect my kitchen, which is more terrifying than having your mother-in-law come over unexpectedly, because they can show up whenever they want. I set up a separate bank account and I got insurance. And every step of the way, my attorney, why are you doing this? You can make candy. Nobody's going to know that you're doing this. But the reason why I took all of those steps was because this was a real business. It was not just a hobby. And I wanted to protect everything that we already had. So our home, our bank accounts, my husband's business, everything. I needed to have a level of protection between all of that and me as Miss Laurie and my business. Entrepreneurially, I've had this business. We run Kuzneski Insurance Group, it's a 57-year-old business that we run like a startup. So we are constantly changing how we do things and what we offer to our clients. We've been angel investors for 20 plus years. I can't tell you how many deals we have done. My husband always says it's 40, but I know it's more than that. So we've seen all kinds of different things happen with startup companies over the years. In my spare time, I sit on the Indiana University of Pennsylvania Board of Trustees, Indiana Regional Medical Center and Punxsutawney Area Hospital boards, and I'm the vice chair of our Chamber of Commerce. So I see a lot of larger businesses and communities that are trying to build startup communities and things like that. So I have a lot of experience working with startup companies. So let's talk about insurance. What is it? So insurance is basically a piece of paper that you buy that takes the risk of whatever your business is doing or whatever you are doing and transfers it to an insurance company or a carrier, insurance carrier. So I am an insurance broker, and we work with carriers or insurance companies. So there's the distinction there. But that's basically what it is. So they sell their products to a whole bunch of people. It's the whole law of large numbers. And then if there's a claim or an issue, they pay based on your policy. How do you get it? So you can go online and get insurance. You can go to your local broker, a State Farm agent, Nationwide, Geico, any of those places. And then you can go to an independent insurance broker. Those are all kind of captive, or they have one group of products they sell. As an independent insurance broker, we have a number of carriers that we can go to. And depending on what your business does, that usually dictates who we take you to in the marketplace. So, some companies like very basic businesses, hey, I'm a bookkeeper, I'm doing accounting work. That's the kind of, low tech business that somebody's running versus, if we have a life science company, we know that we have different carriers that we would take those folks to. So why do you need it? Right? I told you about all the steps that I took to protect my assets and my family. And, it wasn't just insurance. It was getting incorporated. It was setting up a separate bank account. It was all of those things, getting all of those things in place to protect it. But we always say it's important to have insurance so you can sleep at night. So you're not worrying about, geez, what if something happens? So for me, selling peanut brittle, it was, what if somebody eats this and they're allergic to peanuts and they have a reaction? Or what if my neighbor comes to pick up peanut brittle and falls down my front steps on her own fault, but it happened. And so those were things that I worried about happening. And then when I started teaching kids cooking classes, I'm letting 5-year-olds run around my kitchen with a knife and an open flame. That's a whole different level of insurance. So that's why you need it. Okay. Because if what you can do can hurt somebody else, financially, physically, whatever, you want to make sure you have that insurance. And then the big question we always get is, what is this going to cost me? And that depends. So if you are creating an app that my mom could sit and play on her iPad in her chair, some little game or something, that's one thing. If you're a software company that makes apps, if you're a software company that makes software for autonomous vehicles, that's a whole different level of risk. Okay. So it's going to depend on the amount of coverage you need and what it is you do and how risky what you do is. All right. So we see startups at many different stages of their life cycle. So sometimes we talk to startups when they're just getting started. They might have an idea on a napkin. They might be have a business plan or something put together. They're testing out their concept. So we work with people who are pre-revenue, and they might be renting a space here on campus or using a lab, and they need to have general liability insurance for that. So we see a lot of companies at that stage. Then we see them taking on investors, is usually the next milestone that we see. They're building their product or they're opening their doors. They're trying to get employees, and then sometimes we see an exit and or they're just continuing to run their business and grow their business. So each one of those milestones, and there are many, if you look at these dotted lines, these are many other things that can happen in between those milestones where we might talk to you about changing what you have or where your needs are. So if you're just getting started with your business, first question to ask yourself, is this even insurable? We have had companies that have gone down the whole path of a marketing plan. They had business cards printed, everything, and they could not get insurance. We could not find anybody to insure them. So it's a good question to ask. We've also had people who the insurance was so crazy expensive that it would have shut down the company. So, making sure that you understand, is it insurable, and kind of what could it cost, so that if you're raising money or going to market, you have that in your plans. Who says that you need insurance? So if you have a landlord, the universities will tell you that you need insurance if you're spinning technology out of a university. Your clients or vendors are going to ask you, the state in which your company is headquartered, your employees and investors or the banks are going to want you to have insurance. And the coverage that they typically want you to have is general and product liability. So general liability is if someone comes to your office, they slip and fall, that's going to cover them. Your product liability is if you have a product out in the market, does it cause harm to somebody, financial or physical? That would cover that. Workers' compensation, if you have employees and you're paying them payroll, you have to have workers' comp in the state of Pennsylvania. Employee benefits, health insurance, medical, dental, vision, all of those sorts of things they're going to want you to have when you have employees. If you're doing anything with data, cybersecurity, cyber liability insurance is really important. And then this one seems kind of odd, auto insurance. So everybody in Pennsylvania is supposed to have auto insurance, but if you are driving for your company and you get into an accident, you should have hired non-owned auto. So if anybody in your company is driving on behalf of work and they get into an accident, this policy would cover if the person that they get into an accident with would decide to sue the company because they figured out that you're going to a business meeting. So a lot of times they'll think the company has deeper pockets than the actual person in the accident. So we see a lot of that need on our policies as well. And especially if we have younger people who can't rent a car, yet because they're not old enough. So those are some important things to have. Usually their dad tells them or their mom tells them that they have to get that insurance because they don't want them on their policies anymore. So if we're taking on investors or funding, a good investor is going to want you to have directors and officers insurance. This covers, shockingly, the directors and the officers of the company. If you have a board, I won't sit on a board unless I know they have D&O insurance. So whether it's a nonprofit board or a for-profit board, having directors and officers insurance is really important. As a board member, you have sort of a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the company is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So if a shareholder or somebody sues the directors and officers of the company, that policy is going to respond to that. If you ever sit on a nonprofit board, nonprofit D&O insurance is typically cheaper than for-profit companies. So sometimes people are like, hey, yes.
You have a supplemental on your own. So let's say the company has
D&O
your own policy on the side.
No, we usually go by theirs, but I mean, we have it at our own company, but then, yeah. No, but we have, our personal insurance. So we might have an umbrella and things like that on our personal insurance. But usually it's enough to cover the, all the board members of a company. If it's usually $1 million to $2 million.
I'll save it for later.
Okay.
Could be nothing, depending upon the liability that.
Well, this is true. Another one that we see a lot of is key person life insurance. So this is typically a life insurance policy that's owned by the company that is on key people in the organization. So if, you have a crazy mad scientist who has created something that no one else can do, if that person were to die, what would happen to the company? And even if it's not that, we have employees on our team who are so crucial to our team that we have key person life insurance on them, because if something were to happen to them, it would probably shut down our business for a while until we could get things ramped back up. So having key person life insurance on the key people of the company is a great thing to have. And a lot of investors are going to require that. All right, so you're going to open your doors. Okay, so whether that's you're going to put your product out there or you're going to have a brick and mortar store, like I said, you're going to need general liability insurance. And so that's going to cover, slips and falls, things like that. You can add business personal property. So if you have computers, desks, those sorts of things, they call it a business owner's policy, and you can wrap all of those things together. And then, once you have your product, you're going to need your product liability to go out into the market. If you have vendors, are going to require that. I highly recommend getting this before you get your product into the market, because sometimes we get on that life cycle. Oh, hey, my product is out there and now they won't pay me until I show them that I have insurance. So you want to make sure that you are getting these things ahead of time, because it's sometimes harder to put that genie back in the bottle. So you want to make sure you're looking ahead toward things. And then there's tech E&O. So if you're creating a software that is a financial software or something that could break and cause financial hardship, or it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Think about, a software that's maybe, looking at test results and it's making a recommendation. You're going to want to have tech, it's errors and omissions. So if there's an issue with your software platform, a tech policy is really important to have. All right, so when you're trying to attract employees, you want to have employee benefits. This is what the employees want. The health insurance, dental, vision, life and disability. There are voluntary benefits out the wazoo. You can buy pet insurance, you can buy fertility benefits, all sorts of different things that you can offer. Sometimes we see entrepreneurs who are like, I want to give my employees everything. And we have to rein them back in because everything at the start is very expensive. And so, unless you've raised tons and tons of money and you're in a very competitive space, you might have to hit some milestones before you can put all of these benefits into place. And then, oh, yes.
I have a question on these benefits because they seem like they would be maybe tailored towards like your employees, like the age of your employees, the health of your employees. So if like a startup generally has younger, probably generally relatively healthy people involved, with these costs be lower for a company like that versus?
So on the health insurance side, it is based on the age of each employee. And so, yes, it would be cheaper because they're younger. And then as you get older, it's age banded. So certain, I think there's 3 different bands of ages in there. And then dental and vision, those are pretty much what they are. And life and disability and the voluntary benefits are going to depend on the benefits you choose and all of that. And also on the health insurance side, choosing a deductible. Do you want to have access nationally? Do you want to have just local access? So there's a lot of different moving parts to it. Most people don't go direct to a carrier for their insurance. They go to someone like our firm that helps them understand all of the moving parts and shows you all of your different options. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So as a business owner, the coverage you want to have is workers' compensation. 1, it's required. And 2, if somebody gets hurt on the job, that's going to cover those issues. Employment practices liability insurance. This is a lot of times lumped into your business owner's policy, but a lot of times we like to break that out and have a standalone policy. And this basically covers you if you fire somebody and they decide to sue you. And so Pennsylvania is an at-will state. You can fire anybody for any reason, but they can also sue you for any reason. And whether they are correct in why they're suing you or not, you still have to defend yourself. So you pay your deductible. That insurance covers the attorneys, and they usually send somebody out that fights that claim or settles it or whatever they do. But that's a great one to have when you have employees. And then consistent policy. Yes.
I have a question on that. They're covering the legal fees. That probably means the quality of the legal team is also tied into your policy.
So actually, it's the insurance company has a legal team. And so if you buy, say, I don't know, $1 million worth of coverage, they're going to send out their legal team. So we had a claim one time and we had an attorney that came in from Philadelphia who was killer, and he was great. But I mean, truly, we just handed him everything and he took care of it. And so it's, you're going to get a good attorney, and the insurance company pays the claim. So anything that was settled got paid by the insurance company. So that's how that one works.
So it's mutually beneficial for them to do.
Correct. Yes. And so the last one on there is consistent policies and procedures. So that's not exactly insurance, but it is an insurance policy for making sure that you don't have any claims, you know, because insurance is something you buy and you hope you never have to use. But if you have consistent policies and procedures, so consistent hiring practices, consistent communication, and a good handbook, and all of those things that help keep things moving smoothly, that's going to help keep you from having claims on these different policies. All right, so if you are going to exit, so whether that is you've been bought by somebody else or you're shutting down your business. So we see a lot of companies that get merged into another company. Sometimes their benefits and their insurance continues as is. Sometimes it gets merged up into the larger entity. And so when that happens, you need to look at your coverage and make sure to see if you need to replace any personal coverage. So maybe you had, you know, group life in your current company, but they don't carry group life in the larger company. So do you need to replace that life insurance on your own? So those are some different things that you want to think about. And then also there's something called tail coverage. So on like the D&O insurance or the EPLI, you can get tail coverage for a year or 2 years after. So if anybody makes a claim, so we've seen companies that are merging together and somebody files a sexual harassment claim on the company that's being merged in. That kind of stops things. And so their tail coverage would cover that, that claim versus the new company having to take that claim on. So when we see companies merging in and or getting bought, we often put in tail coverage in place for those folks. But then if you're running your business, you are, you know, starting a business to grow a business and continue running that business, you want to maintain your insurance. So, you know, you update your carrier with changes. When COVID hit, we had a lot of people disperse. We were sending bills to where the company was headquartered, and then to find out that, oh, well, we moved to Colorado, and so we're not checking that mail anymore. And so bills weren't getting paid and things like that. So anytime there's a change in location, or if you're hiring new people, if you buy big equipment, things like that, you want to let your broker know so that we can add it to your policy or let you know if you need to make changes to your policy. So right now, if a company has a medical device and they're doing all of this work and we have all this other insurance in place, but now they're going to trial. So we have to get FDA trial insurance in there. And so, you know, those are the things that we need to know so that we can make sure that you have the right coverage. If you have a claim, you need to file it immediately. Yesterday, we had somebody that wanted to know, I bought laptops. Are those covered under my general liability policy and my business personal property, or should I get the Apple Care? I would do both. So, you know, it's the Apple Care is going to pay if you drop that computer. The insurance is going to pay if there's a fire or somebody steals that computer. So, you know, you want to let us know immediately that you have a claim. And then you need to pay your bill. So this is the other thing that we run into a lot. You know, startups are usually strapped for cash in a lot of cases. But you want to make sure that these bills get paid, because a lot of times if the carrier cancels you, they will not rewrite that policy. And so sometimes we struggle to get insurance written for these startups because they're doing something out of the norm. And so once we get that, you want to hang on to it. And if you don't have this insurance, it can stop your forward momentum, because, you know, your vendors are going to want it. The university is going to want it, all of that. So make sure you pay your bill. And then review and renew your insurance annually. So these policies are for a year. And every year you get a renewal. And that's a great time to look at, have we made any changes? Did we add any equipment? Anything that got missed throughout the year? That's when you can add it to your policy. And if you look at things and say, oh, we only had $10,000 of EPLI. I think I want to get that standalone policy now that I've got more employees. Let's get that policy. So that's a perfect time to do that if you don't do it throughout the year. And then continually review your processes and your policies. So this is something as things come up, we will, you always get that one employee who likes to push back on everything and they, like, hey, dress professionally. And so they come in a hoodie and it's like, no hoodies. And they're like, well, it doesn't say that in the handbook. So now you have a policy that says no hoodies. And so sometimes you have to continually add these things to make sure that you have a consistent culture and policy within your organization. So those will also help you if there's ever an issue on the employment side or things like that. Yes.
Is that only during the merger or this takes time?
So you can get like a year or 2 years on the tail coverage. So it would, you would choose which one. And then once the merger is done, they would take on anything, new that would come in. Any other questions? So that's what I have for you guys today. Are there any other questions? I know you wanted to dig a little deeper on the D&O side.
Fine, okay, yeah, so I mean, just, not currently on the board, but advisory boards.
Mhm.
And just concerned about, say, like my wife is on one, the nuclear industry. I'm working with a company that does, I was going to say industrial safety, accident avoidance.
Uh-huh.
And so both of those have high liability type things. And I'm wondering, I have a general personal liability umbrella.
Mhm.
But is there more, like, my wife's side actually scares me. That's enormous.
Yeah.
It can have a long tail, like you said, too.
Yeah. So I think it would depend on, the industry, if what their D&O policy looks like. So they should have pretty high limits, I would think. Sometimes certain industries might be covered by the government. And depending on whether or not she is a board of director or just an advisor, as an advisor, she might want to have, like professional liability insurance on her own. As an advisor, you could do something like that. So there are some different things that you could look at. And so if that's something you want to chat about, we can definitely dig into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hi, how are you? Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you guys made it. Do you have any questions about insurance? Not yet. Do you have a business idea?
Yeah, we are just thinking about this.
Oh, are you? Okay, good. Anybody else have any questions?
I guess so a client approaches you, and do you generally have, like, based on their industry, like a package that is then just uniquely tailored to like their piece in that industry then?
Yeah, so what we do is, and it's important when depending on who you work with. So we get a lot of clients that come to us with an insurance policy that they either got online themselves or they went to their home and auto dealer and just got a business owner's policy. We've had a medical device company that was, their policy was covering a t-shirt manufacturer, which is very different. And the cost of the insurance was triple what they were paying because the risk of what they were doing is much greater than somebody who's making t-shirts. So, making sure that you work with somebody who really understands what you're doing so that they can make sure that the underwriters at the carrier understand what it is they're covering, so that they really get a good sense of what the risk is. So we do see a lot of that. So, if you're in life sciences, there are certain carriers and they might have certain applications that they want you to fill out. We've had people in the aviation industry, that's a whole nother application. Each one of these different types of policies, they, might need different information from you, financials, payroll amounts, your employees, where do they live, all of those things, so that we can get you a quote. But what we do is look at your situation. Where are you in your life cycle? What is your product? What are you trying to accomplish? And then we help you put a blueprint together of what you're going to need and when you're going to need it.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. It's like, going off the example of the autonomous vehicle, you're just working on it, in a lab with an RNC car, your insurance should be probably very low compared to when you're actually fielding it.
So what you have to do is we have to look at what you're doing right now. And sometimes we say you don't need insurance yet because, I think about my husband, he was a computer science major and he was coding in his dorm room in college and, building a business on his computer. He didn't need insurance for that. But if you are working in a lab here and you're taking technology from the university and you are applying it to something, usually there's going to be some sort of a contract that you have to fill out with the university, and they're going to have requirements for you to have insurance. So if you are using a lab, you might need to have general liability insurance. And depending on what you're doing, we have companies that are, have lab space, they're working with chemicals and they're working with heat and all these different things. Those are all taken into consideration when we are, putting together a proposal for you and to take it to the underwriters. And we always ask that you make sure that your business plan and if you have a website, both say the same thing, because sometimes people will, do their business plan and then they'll put together their website and they've iterated between the business plan and the website. And when those carriers look at the business plan and then they look at your website and they say two different things, that's a red flag. And so they're like, what are we really insuring? And so you want to make sure that things are consistent. And when they look at financials, we want your real financials, not your pie in the sky financials that you show investors. We want to see the real financials that you have, because that's, they want to make sure that you are going to be in business for a bit. Any others? No. All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask. Okay. You can email me or link into me. Okay.